Welcome back into the afternoon sports drive on Triple Play Sports Radio. Jordan King, Jason Elmquist, and joined by our local area sports reporter, prep sports reporter, Jordan Bishop. And we'll get into the Perry game coming up here, but we do have a phone call, so you're on the afternoon sports drive. Go ahead. That is a no. If that was you trying to get a hold of us, call back in. Apologize if that was on our end. I believe we were all square on our end, though, so call back in if you want to, 533-1020, 533-1051, 405 area codes on those. If you want to get in and talk a little prep sports. So, Jordan, Perry, Millwood, number 1, number 2. Oh, let's try this again. We just had the phone ring again, so we'll try this again. You're on the afternoon sports drive. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on your talk about where to host the state championship games. How about you do what Kansas does? They each have a different location for each of their classes. For example, 6A is at Koch Arena in Wichita, 5A is at Emporia State University, 4A is at Salina, 3A is at Hutchinson, 2A is at Fort Hays State University, and 1A is out at Dodge City. I'll let you guys discuss that.
Appreciate the phone call.
Thanks for the phone call.
Because, again, I've been to several of those, having grown up in Kansas. My high school, the girls' team made it to state one year, and I went out to Salina. And it is. I mean, it's different. I don't think it takes away from anybody. Because obviously a lot of people want this whole, we're all these classes are playing at one place. But I mean, you see it in other sports throughout the Oklahoma. It's not necessarily a case where you have to play it at one place, and I think it is beneficial at times because he mentioned for some of those Class A, Class 2A, most of those classifications are only found out in Western Kansas.
Yeah.
So it never made sense for them to have to drive over to Lawrence or Salina or whatever if most of those teams are out there. And that's why you see a lot of teams. It's crazy when you got teams from the Panhandle or down all the way in southeastern Oklahoma having to drive all the way up to Oklahoma City. I like that. That was something I enjoyed. I covered state a couple times when I was out in Garden City at different classifications, and it was difficult for the media, sure, because you had to coordinate a little bit better if you had multiple teams in your area at all these locations. But I don't ever think it really took away from the fan experience in my mind.
Yeah, see, I've always wanted to do something like that for not only basketball but also for baseball and for football, because I know you're thinking of everybody want their sights are set in the big house and for basketball, but I want each place to have like a location, because that's what we used to do with football. Everybody go to BPS, but every class should have their own place. That way you can have it like the road to Lawton or the road to Tulsa, something like that, so that where you're going to be instead of it being made up last minute by the OSSAA. I think that would be great for the fans.
Because you can't even say right now, that I think I had to kind of correct myself yesterday that Perry's one win away from the state tournament, but they're not necessarily one win away from playing in the big house, because we don't know if this is the year that 4A gets to play all 3 games in the big house. So Perry's road to the state tournament could suddenly go to Mustang or to Bethany or wherever before ever making it to the big house. So it's kind of a messy situation.
Yeah.
I will say this. Wisconsin does everything, all basketball at the Kohl Center, does all football at Camp Randall. Now, that's obviously a little bit different because you aren't going to one high school to do it. You're going to a college venue. And the difference is, I believe, in football, you're just playing the state championship there. And in basketball, I believe they just send 4 teams. So you have what their version of area would be, takes you down to the end of that. They call it sectionals. So you have regionals and sectionals. Okay. Sectionals take you down. There's 4 sections in the state, and those take you to Madison. So only 4 teams go. So that's that would be essentially the same thing as they do here, except for you take out one of those games and put that back into whatever the area.
Yeah. A couple curious questions with that in mind. How many classifications does Wisconsin have? And is it all of them play the same weekend, or they try to spread it out?
Oh, jeepers!
If you recall, putting you on the spot there.
Let me see. I know there are 4 divisions for soccer. It gets crazy for football. There's something like 7 divisions or something like that. Division 1 all the way down to 7. Let me look it up for basketball though, because that's a good question. But while I'm looking that up, that's just kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
5 divisions in basketball.
Okay.
So 5, and I'm trying to figure out when they play state. State tournament March 14th to 16th at the Kohl Center, obviously in Madison. So that will be March 14th. You have, but again, semifinals to championships, all in those 3 days.
So with it being 3 days, is it a case where they do a couple of classifications, first round on Thursday, the other ones on Friday, and then all championship games on Saturday?
So according to this, you have the Division 3 and 4 on Thursday, Division 5, 2, and 1 on Friday. Try to figure again. We're still talking about a state entity here, so they can't expect them to make complete sense. And then Saturday they start off with the 3-point challenge in the morning. I guess they have a 3-point contest. That's actually pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Cool.
And then they have 2 sessions: 3, 4, and 5, and then 2 and 1 at the night session. So Saturday.
So all championship games are Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday from like 11:05, I would assume, to like darn near 11 o'clock at night. They're playing championship games. So. That's an interesting way that they do it, but again, you're not sending quarterfinal games down to what they qualify as state. State is just the semifinals and the finals.
So it's just a final 4 for each division up there. And again, kind of to the caller's point, Oklahoma's already kind of has that because 6A is over in Tulsa at the Mabee Center. So I mean, why can you say, well, 6A deserves to play at a Division I basketball arena, and everyone else has to play at a decrepit old fairgrounds?
Well, and that's a good point. And that's the same. It's the same thing I said back when we had this conversation about football. Is why do some of them get to play at stadiums that are better than other ones? Like everyone in Wisconsin goes and plays at Camp Randall. Right. Everyone wants to go play at the college stadium. And I know that the politics that surround having to do that and the fact that Wisconsin's been able to work that out is great for them. And I know it's not feasible in every state. I understand that. But the fact that you're getting kind of 2 different treatments depending on how big your school is, to me is kind of crappy, honestly. Yeah. And I understand the fact that you want to have everyone in the same location so you kind of get different exposure for different teams. I'm a Division 3 fan, but they're also doing the Division 4 and 5 championships the same time. I'm probably going to watch it because my ticket gets me into that whole session. So, I mean, if you want to, that's kind of an incentive. Like, if your team, you get exposure to different fan groups and to the whole entire state is kind of the draw to that. Whereas this, if you're only holding Class A, well, I've seen every Class A team. I haven't, but a lot of Class A fans probably have seen most of the Class A teams, kind of know what that's about. So it would be interesting if you did change that up and you get to see some teams that you don't often get to see.
Yeah. And the thing with the football, it kind of makes sense, was Class C had a better state championship than Class 6A too. Because C got to play at SWASU, a college stadium, and 6A2 had to go to Owasso. So, I mean, I think there's drawbacks. I mean, obviously, it'd be cool to eat for each class to have their own place to go. But I think, obviously, the best pick would be kind of like what Wisconsin does, though. Play them all at one place, but make sure it's a nice arena. So if it's like it is now at the Big House, just make it a nicer arena and have 6A play there, too. Have everybody play at the same place. In football, have them all play at Boone Pickens, or have them all play down at the Gaylord, or have them play freaking at East Central or something.
Let me ask you this: Would you have a problem if state was only semifinals and finals?
No.
Would you have a problem with making it a little more exclusive?
No,
that would be cool too, because like you mentioned sectionals. That way you know where each team is from. So
right.
They're from the southwest part, they're from the southeast part.
Yeah.
So then also we can get Frontier and Glencoe boys to play each other for a sectional. So
got another phone call. Go ahead. You're on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Yeah, my phone call dropped earlier. What I wanted to discuss is, since you brought it up, be more selective. How do you feel about having single elimination versus double elimination like it is now?
Throughout the whole entire tournament?
Throughout the whole entire tournament.
That would be interesting. I'll let these guys weigh in on it.
I've always been fascinated by the fact that it's double elimination in the state, because in Kansas it is single elimination from the get-go. There is no you get a chance, and that would again allow the opportunity to clear up the possibility of narrowing down to 4 for state. I've always been baffled, confused by the whole double elimination, because then if you're gonna if you're going to do double elimination, well, why don't you just do that for the state tournament as well? Why are you suddenly going to shift it if you're going to do double elimination just to go back to single elimination in the state tournament? To me, it didn't make sense. What about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I think it's just convoluted to look at the double elimination, because you're having to go through, okay, all right, they lost this, but then they got the consolation bracket. They're going to play the runner-up of this one. They're going to do this, and then just make it all the same, and it makes it clear bracket.
Yeah, those brackets are confusing to read.
They're confusing, and then makes a clear bracket, and also makes the whole tournament more swift, so you're not having playoffs for 3 weeks.
Good point. One of the problems that they had in Kansas is that they had, in the single elimination, they had teams assigned to sub-states. You would have some really tough sub-states with some really good teams, but on the other hand, you had some really weak sub-states. And there would be a team coming out from each of those that get to go to the state tournament.
Yeah, and that's kind of the argument that Wisconsin ran into a little bit, is that some sections are naturally a little bit less talented in some people's eyes than others, or you have the sectional that includes like all the Milwaukee teams, which some people believe are better, and then you have the sectional that includes Madison teams, and those teams are bigger city. They assume these teams are better, and then you got the two sections that are from more rural parts of Wisconsin, and they don't think that they can compete. So you run into all of that, obviously. I think overall it ends up evening itself out over time. Like, you're always going to have one group of teams that always ends up sending a weaker team, but I just think over time you don't lose quality of competition.
Well, and I would say, and I understand the argument with sub-state, but at the same time, if that team were good enough to be at the state tournament that lost in the sub-state, they should have beaten that team that qualified for state. I mean, that's kind of the argument I would say with that. But I do understand the fact that because that would be like a team that got to go to state with a 3 wins, and those 3 wins were just in sub-state, just because they got in an easy sub-state, where somebody else who won 25 games lost to another team that had 25. I understand that as well. So I mean, it's a fine line, but I still like the fact that it's not double elimination. If you're going to have a state tournament be a single elimination, why do you have it double elimination? Well, outside of that one random first round game in some of the classifications, district where if you win, you advance into the double elimination. If you lose, then you're officially done. It's just so weird and hard to follow for just a natural sports fan, let alone people. And we're having issues with it, and we've been covering it for 8-9 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things they've done in Kansas now in Class 4A up to 6A is they have seeded all the teams in those classes. They will have a West bracket and an East bracket, and they will seed both of those brackets. And then it's single elimination, so you will take 4 teams from the West and 4 teams from the East, and that's your state tournament. That's one thing that they have done to eliminate the strong sub-state versus the weak sub-state.
I like that. I think that was a smart move. Again, I've been well after I've left, because it was always just a kind of everyone eventually met there. It was never a seeding type of thing, but I like that idea, because again, like you said, it took out the whole strong versus weak and stuff like that. And again, I don't like, because we're at what point in basketball, if you go to the college, is it a double elimination tournament? So to me, and again, I'm always one of those, they should be trying to be as comparable and whatnot. But to me, the double elimination, most times the teams that go to state out of, large margin, both boys and girls out of the state, are the teams that are usually in that, that finals, like Perry on Friday night. More than likely, both of those teams will eventually go to state. So why do you need to do a double elimination?
Right.
Jordan Woodruff did want to mention this. 5A and 6A are always 4 East versus 4 West teams, so they try to balance that out up there. At the 5A and 6A.
It's totally different at other classifications.
Yeah, and again, that's where you run into some of that. We got to hit a timeout. Anything else, caller?
That's it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the input and all the insight up there from Kansas. That was obviously it's interesting when you start comparing. But I think it is a good point to say, why should Perry potentially have to play Chisholm again? They beat him.
Yeah.
They beat him. Chisholm should be not able to play them anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. We'll finally get to Perry coming up next. We ventured off down the rabbit hole of criticizing the OSSAA there. So
Which we love doing around here.
why is it always that happens when Jordan Bishop's sitting there?
I'm
between
sorry.
us? I'm not really sure. We'll figure that out. We'll try to figure that out during the break. It's the Afternoon Sports Drive.
We know Cowboy fans because we are Cowboy fans. We're your only home for sports talk with an orange flavor. The Triple Play Sports Radio Network.